Well, thank you everyone for coming for our new event in HunterWiSE. Just before we start, just some housekeeping. A reminder of the university COVID procedures. Please ensure you have checked with your QR code display in the entrance. Visitors, please ensure have you also completed the form, the authorized form. I think most of you already did. In the unlikely event of a fire or emergency, please use the stairs to exit the building. The stairs are located behind the lifts. And if you are looking for bathrooms, head towards the lift. They can found in the right. Okay, then you like to document our events as well with photography. If you would prefer not to appear in the photos, in our photos, please just let us know before you leave the event today. Thank you as well for the ones joined by Zoom. Good morning for you. Towards the end of the session, we will invite questions. And if you are on Zoom, please post the questions, your questions in the chat. And one of the HunterWiSE team will ask them on your behalf. And I ask you, and I believe you are all, but if you are not, please mute yourselves as we start here. Well, for the second time, welcome for our HunterWiSE event today. Before I start, I'd like to we acknowledge and respect the Pambalonga clan of the Wabakal people, traditional custodians of the land on which this campus of the University of Newcastle is situated. We pay our respect to elders past, present, emerging. We acknowledge and pay respect to the other First Nations from which our students, staff, and the community are drawn. Well, for the third time, I have 4 welcomes. For the third time, welcome again for the HunterWiSE event. I know that some people are the first time that are coming for a HunterWiSE event. HunterWiSE is an initiative that we started some years ago in the University of Newcastle. In fact, I think I have a slide here. Yeah. We start 7 academics from the University of Newcastle. And you would like just to do something about the low numbers of women following STEM careers. We have different projects under HunterWiSE. One is an school outreach. We go to schools and we develop projects with a group of girls in different schools in Hunter region. This year we are running 90 different schools. This project is run for 10 weeks, and the whole project is run by mentors that are female senior students or female PhD students, all from STEM area. And in fact, we are running the project right now in the term 2 in 90 different schools in Hunter. We have a HunterWiSE network that hopefully you all are part of. If you are not, please let us know that we tell you how to be part of the HunterWiSE network group. We organize events as this one. We as well have sometimes seminars. We have Q&A sessions. And if you'd like to see some kind of event that you've never seen before running by HunterWiSE, please let us know. We would be very happy to hear your ideas. We have other projects running as well. We do projects, we collect data to see how things are going. And as well, soon we'll have the alumni. It's a project that we are working at the moment to connect the girls that participate of HunterWiSE projects since it started, that was in 2017 until today. And more coming, and you can follow us in Facebook, Twitter, what else? LinkedIn maybe. Different ways that you can connect with us. My fourth welcome to Linda. Linda Drummond is a science communicator and a former journalist with over 25 years experience across our areas of media. Linda has seen both sides of media. She has been the journalist looking for stories, conduct interviews, writing and publishing. Linda has also worked in higher education here in Newcastle. As a communications officer at the university, she was responsible for writing media releases, pitching to the media, and training researchers in how to speak to the media. She continues to contribute to the university through her work with the research office. We are very pleased to welcome Linda today. Her commitment to promoting and communicating research and researchers is respected and appreciated, and we are very excited to hear from her today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. And thank you, HunterWiSE, for inviting me here. As you know, I love the work that you do. So the fact that you've invited me here today to help, share some of my knowledge with so many wonderful women in the area makes me very happy. So welcome, everyone. I'm just going to try and condense 25 years of experience into an hour. So, ask me plenty of questions at the end, but hopefully I'll get onto it. And if not, you can find me on Twitter and you can ask me some questions there later on. All right, so this is a little bit about me. So I've been a journalist for a range of different publications. I've also been interviewed by TV, radio, newspapers for various things. I've been a blogger. I started a hashtag campaign a few years ago when SPC Ardmona Cannery was at risk and encouraged people to buy SPC on SPC Sunday, which resulted in a $20 million investment by the government and Safe Company. So that was a good thing that I did back then. So because I've been on both sides, I know what a journalist wants, and then I know how you should present things as well. So what I'm hoping to do today is to make you a little bit more enthusiastic about speaking to the media, and hopefully to get some new faces out there and some new voices in the media, because we certainly need them. All right, so news has changed quite dramatically since I started in news. I started off in print journalism and then moved to digital journalism. And even in the last 5 years, it's changed. So realistically now, news isn't so much about informing people, but it's about having a wow factor. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that it has to be fake news or sensationalised. It's more just something surprising and interesting. And I think every single one of you in this room and on Zoom today will have something about your work and yourself that is interesting and surprising that people need to know about. So often have a bit of a think about what I want you to do is think about what your story is. So the typical thing that when someone talks to you about the work that you do and they're like, oh, I had no idea that we did that here in the Hunter, or oh, I didn't know that we could do that, or how do you think we could do that in the future? They're the kinds of things that you should be putting yourself out there into the news about. So definitely there's a level of information. So as you know, for example, in the energy field at the moment, there's a lot of focus on energy and changing directions in energy. And we don't really understand what it is. So, it's really great to see we actually have a wonderful woman, Dr. Jessica Allen in Newcastle, who's doing a great job informing Australians about the hydrogen economy and what needs to be done there. So sort of have a look at what's available and where you can maybe add some insight. And that's where we'll put you out into the news. Definitely there's also the entertainment factor as well. So I'll speak a bit later on about the importance of photos and images as well, but what you're kind of doing is you're telling a story, and that's how you get everyone interested and involved. If someone's going to give you money, they need to be entertained in some way. So let's look at different ways of doing that. Everyone has something interesting that they'd like to tell people, but the thing is, it has to have an angle. It can't just be a straight statement. There also has to be something about it that makes it unique and makes it different. We're really, really lucky here in Newcastle and the Hunter in that we have really good media. So we have local newspapers such as the Newcastle Herald, the Maitland Mercury, the Singleton Argus. We have local regional papers who actually do care about their community and want to put information out to their community. And the journalists out there are always looking for something that their community is interested in. So I'd love you to spend a bit of time after this session just thinking, all right, so what is it about where I work and the work that I do, the work I'm doing now and the work that we're looking to do in the future? Why do the community care about it, and why should the community care about it? That's your angle to put out there. So definitely have a brainstorm with each other as well, because sometimes you mightn't be thinking about it, but it's almost like go back and over lunchtime, just think, all right, what is it? What's my story? What's my angle? Why should the community care about what I'm doing? Good morning.
Morning, sorry.
All right, so every single platform that you're looking at are after something a little bit different. Okay, so generally speaking in the media, we've got the newspapers, as I mentioned, the local ones. We've got TV. Again, our local television is great. NBN are always looking for local stories. They're looking for nice little 3 to 5 minute clips on something. And our local radio. I would strongly recommend, if you've never done any form of media before, that the first form of media you do is with ABC Newcastle. Generally speaking, they are the nicest people you'll ever meet. They are genuinely friendly, and if you speak to them beforehand and say, this is my first time, I'm a bit nervous, they will treat you very kindly. They'll do a pre-record sometimes as well, so they'll pre-record it and so it can be edited later on. It doesn't necessarily have to be live to air. So you've got like the breakfast program, for example, with Dan and Jenny. Nice, light, short stories, interested in local events and what's in the news at the moment, but also something surprising and quirky. So you might find something there to talk about. So every single one of them is after something different. I think it's always a good idea to know what to expect when you do the media before doing it. So what will often happen is you'll do an interview for the media and you'll be interviewed for 30 minutes, but then you'll see yourself on TV and you've got like the, 20-second clip that comes up and you're like, what happened to all that time that I spent talking to them? That's actually forming the background for the journalist. So you've got to think about that, just going, you know what, most of what I do is actually just going to be background information for the journalist so they know more about what I'm doing. But generally speaking, you're after a couple of quotes. The good things that, how sometimes you're listening to the radio and they share like a little bit of an interview that they've done with someone. It's this nice little quote that comes up. What's your quotes? And for every single story that you're doing, stop, think about it, prepare yourself 2 to 3 quotes. For the newspaper, think about images as well. Now, I'll talk a bit more about this later, but my theory with an image is always look at a good landscape image. So if someone was coming here to take a photo of you, you wouldn't say, I'll just take a photo of me here. You go, let's go over here and I'll stand up against that pylon and I'll get that fabulous view in the background. So what that means is when you've got a newspaper, which is like laid out, they have to give you more space because they've got this nice big image, right? So you have a look at the newspaper and they'll have a story and it's got a little square photo and then you just get a little bit of story there. But if you've got a great image, they'll give you more copy that goes alongside of it as well. So yeah, that's my little tip on that one, which really, really helps. If you're thinking about doing something for the TV, save the journalist time. You're really busy and so are journalists. So if you can say, all right, I've got a journalist coming today from NBN, where are 3 different locations that they can give me some shots? So when you think about it, have a look at the news and when you see something, it's like you've got what's called the establishing shot, which is a nice wide shot of, let's say, someone working in the field, like a long distance one. Then there's like an interview shot of a bit more of a headshot. And then you might have another one as well where you've got a close up of something. So think to yourself, don't just go, oh, getting interviewed, just come into my office. It's nice and quiet there. Because as you know, your office is going to be pretty boring and they'll just go, oh, let's just give them a short segment. Think about, all right, where's somewhere that I can go that's relevant to my work, but also offers up a bit of interesting value. Okay, so for radio, you've got a couple of different things for radio. You've got the news programs, which are a really short grab. So what you'll be doing there is you'll get interviewed by the radio news journalist and they will, again, ask for a bit of background for a 2-minute piece and you'll probably get 1 quote, maybe 2 quotes. Otherwise, you've got the programs, breakfast, mornings, drive. They tend to be around about a 3 to 7 minute chat, which is really, really short. So what I recommend doing before, if you do manage to get an interview with someone, make some notes, write down your dot points, the key things that you want to talk about. And most importantly, write down any facts or figures or numbers or most important points. You will be amazed sometimes at what you forget when you're being interviewed. So definitely write them down, have them nearby. You can do that for all forms. If you're interviewed by the newspaper, you can have your notes. If you're interviewed by TV, just have them over there. And then just say, when the journalist asks you a question, you say your quote and just go, can I just check that figure? Can we just, and the cameraman or camera person will cut, I'll come back to it. All right, so you've also got a couple of different other options as well where you don't necessarily have to put yourself out there as much. So you've got your interviews and your profiles. So a really good profile, for example, is I like the ones where you've got someone who does something completely different. Like there was one the other day about the Newcastle Jets keeper, Claire Coelho, and she is a goalkeeper by night, and she is a lawyer by day. So it's quite an interesting thing. It's like you've got two different sides to it. So if there's something like that, that can be a really interesting profile story. You've also got your opinion pieces. So, for example, the opinion columns in the Newcastle Herald or local newspapers, they're around about 500 words where you can write your opinion on something that is important to you and is important to the community. The expert commentary is another one as well. So that's where something is happening at the moment and it's of relevance to your work. So let's say that you are a lawyer and your work is on international trade. So, for example, you might be called on at the moment to speak about our trade wars with China and what's going on there. So certainly you can look to put yourself up. There are also special interest publications as well. So engineering have a lot of different publications that you can look to speak to a journalist there and get yourself in. And they often offer up as well advertorials where you can pay to get an ad for your company in, but then get a story as well about yourself. All right, now, when you think about doing some media, think about where your audience is. Often people think, I need to get some publicity, and they think I've got to get local, national publicity. But do you really need to get national publicity? So think about what it is that you're wanting to put out there. So, for example, when HunterWiSE launched, they got some great coverage in local papers, particularly in the area like Singleton, Argus and so on, where you are actually doing work inside the schools. And they're the people that you want to reach. There's the communities that you need to go to. So think about who you want to approach and what it is that they're listening to or reading. Like sometimes it can be quite an unusual thing. Like, for example, there are websites in Newcastle like Nui with Kids or Newcastle Live that deal with quite a different audience. But if you're looking for someone with a younger demographic, they're the places that you need to go. Now, this is the joy that you have. You can actually choose your journalist to pitch to. You don't have to, if a journalist contacts you, you don't have to actually do anything with them. I always recommend that you Google a journalist if they contact you to find out what type of stories that they do and if you like them. But let's say you've decided to yourself, you've come out of this today, you thought, you know what, I'm going to go to the Newcastle Herald and I'm going to get them to write a story on me. So have a look through the Herald, look at the stories that are similar to what you've got on offer and see who the journalist is that's writing those stories. And their byline will be in there, and then you'll be able to find their details online and you can contact them. So, yeah, you've got different styles of story for different times of day, for example, on radio. So with breakfast, they are much lighter and they're shorter. So the morning show, which was with Kaya Hanley, they're much longer and more conversational, up to 10 minutes. And the drive program is the one that when news breaks on the day, that's when they tend to sort of go into a bit more depth and they talk about the issues of the day. So if any of you worked on a media release before or had work with that, yeah, I spent most of my career learning how to craft media releases, and I must say they're pretty much dead now. The idea of being able to send out a media release widely, like I started back in the day when we used to fax a media release out. So the days of that are gone. What journalists like now is they actually like more of a direct pitch and something that is just for them alone, that makes you think, all right, I've thought about you, I've thought about your program, I've thought about your audience, and this is something that's interesting to you. Think about this the same as with your career. You don't want people coming to you trying to sell you something that is not relevant to you and your audience, and it's the same with journalists as well. So generally speaking, you can email journalists. They are always looking for stories. If it's something that interests them, they will do it. I'm happy to share my email with you as well. So if you do have some ideas later on, please feel free to send it to me and go, hey, what do you think about this? And I'll have a bit of a think about it as well. So yeah, with the pitch, what you're looking for is you're looking for a really nice introductory paragraph to grab some attention. I usually like to start by personalising it to the journalist, to particularly if I've got a story and I know, as I said, if you look at the type of stories that they've done before that are similar, so, you know, you can just say, oh, hey, Anita, I saw your piece the other day, you know, about this fabulous woman who, oh, is that the aircon?
No, ship.
What's a ship? Sorry, Zee, on the harbour. It's okay. Okay, so definitely, you know, and saying I've got a similar story that I think might be of interest to you and your readers. So, and then give them a little bit of a background, which is like who, what, why, where, sometimes how. Also, it's a good idea to send through some photos as well. So they don't have to be professional photos. Your phone photos now are pretty much high quality enough to be published in a paper anyway. What you're just trying to do is you're trying to grab their attention. So let's say, for example, you've just got this, you know, brand new piece of earth moving equipment and you've painted it purple and it looks fabulous and it's quite interesting and unique in this country. Send a photo of that with a person for scale and they'll be just like, whoa, that's a great photo. Our readers will be really interested in it. Always put your contact details in there. So the more contactable you are, so for example, if you've got LinkedIn or if you've got Twitter, make sure that there's an easy way for people to contact you who need to. So email is one, but mobile is always best. Definitely tell them that it's exclusive as well. So what they want is they don't want to do something that everyone else runs with. You'll find nowadays that unless it's a government press release, you don't tend to see the same news stories on all the different programs. Like you won't see it on ABC, The Herald and ABC unless it is something that's really, really big and generally politically motivated. They tend to like something that's unique and different because they're all after an audience. They need something different and they need to have a reason for them to be tuning in. Now, my favourite thing is what I call good talent, right? All journalists and producers call people good talent. ABC, for example, once you've been on and you've done well, you go into their good talent book. It's not really called that, but they've got a little book that isn't really a book now because it's online, but they put everyone who's been on radio, who speaks well on a topic, they put their contact details in there, and then producers from all around the country can find you and they'll give you a call. So you'll find that once you start doing well, they'll contact you. So I used to have when I was a journalist, I used to have a list of people that I knew were good talent. So one of them coincidentally is someone who works at the University of Newcastle. Her name is Professor Claire Collins. So I used to deal with her 15 years ago. I think was the first time I ever dealt with her. And she was always good talent because she would always be available. She would always give me great quotes and they would always be different. So she would be offered up by the Dietitians Association of Australia on certain days. Let's say it's International Drink More Water Day. And as I said, she would come up with an angle. And so I would interview her and every other health and wellbeing journalist in the country would interview her. And the stories would come out, every single quote was different. She didn't use the same quote for every journalist, which is just an astonishing talent. So she's always there. So yeah, so good talent. And again, I'm going to talk about Jessica Allen again. She's being known as really good talent. So she is just being seen on lots of different TV shows just because they know that she's friendly, she's personable, she's knowledgeable, and she'll turn up and know what she's talking about. So, as I said, ABC Newcastle, best place to start. So you've walked out of here and you thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to ABC. I think ABC mornings will be my best bet, right? What you want to do is you want to call them, you want to speak to a producer. So the best time to do that is when they're not on air but just after they've gone to air. So think about when the programs are online. So for example, breakfast is on from 5:30. No one's going to be calling before that, till 9 a.m. So you probably want to call them about 10. They tend to go into meetings afterwards, but if you call, leave a message, you'll get through. Call the general ABC number, just say, oh, hi, just want to speak with a producer on this program. You don't have to know their name. Find out who they are and just say, look, just wanted to introduce myself. Here's my name. I'd love to offer myself up if you need expert on any advice. So can I get your email address and I'll just send you through some information. Right, so then you send through a bit of a brief biography about yourself. Again, something that fits on a page in an email. And just say, this is my name, here's my area of expertise, and I can talk about the following topics, ... Just quite broad. Again, do that to a Herald journalist as well, particularly if something's happening. If something starts happening in the news around an area that you work in and you think, you know what, I've got something to add to this, then send it through to a Herald journalist who's one of the ones that does some work in that area. Definitely when news breaks, let's say you're a coastal scientist and there's a tsunami warning and you think, could it possibly hit Sydney or Newcastle? We don't know. All right, I'm going to call and put my name forward to say, hi, just want to let you know I'm a coastal scientist. If you want someone to talk about the tsunami, here's my details. Might not happen the first time, but they will definitely get back to you and you'll find yourself all of a sudden getting called all the time. All right, now before you do an interview, let's say you've set up your interview, it's great, everything's wonderful, you're looking forward to it. Before you go on air or before you talk to them, I recommend just doing a really quick Google search just to make sure nothing major has happened. So say, for example, you're going to go on and talk about tsunamis and then a tsunami has just hit somewhere that you weren't expecting it. You don't want to go on air and they're like, oh, what do you think about the tsunami in Taiwan? And you're like, oh, I didn't realise, right? So you just do a very quick search, first of all, just to make sure nothing's happened. Definitely have any recent statistics or any really interesting information, write that down and have that to hand as well. Often what you might get asked to do, and academics are asked to do it a lot, there'll be a paper that will be published in your field of research that you haven't been involved in, but they might say, what do you think about this? Like, microRNAs, are they the new future for COVID-19 vaccine? Then definitely have a read of it, read the abstract. Generally speaking, with half an hour to 45 minutes, you can prepare yourself well enough to talk on these topics. I strongly recommend when you are being interviewed that you think about really interesting and easy to understand analogies or examples. So when you're describing something, let's say, for example, you're talking about how much water we use in Newcastle, then think of it in terms of, what is that? Is it one Sydney harbour's worth, Newcastle harbour's worth? Think about something that people can picture in their minds straight away and that they readily understand. Okay, so again, going back to my good talent and thinking to yourself, what is that person? So just to reiterate, they provide some really brief background information so the journalist immediately understands what it is that they're talking about. They speak in short sentences that provide a soundbite. So when I'm mentioning that, have a look, for example, at a magazine and say, look, you're looking at a 2-page spread in a magazine. You'll find what's called a pull quote. And there'll be a big quote that's in quite large font that's sitting there. They're the ones that you need to come up with. That's the interesting bit. So you need to find out your good soundbite. Being available, like making time to do it. So let's say, for example, that you do start to become quite a media person. People will want to get in contact with you on the day. If there's something interesting that's happening, it needs to be that day. It can't be tomorrow. I would suggest as well that if you really can't do something, that you have a colleague that you know that could do the work as well, so you can suggest someone else. That was another thing that I really appreciated about someone. If they couldn't do it, then they would put me onto someone else. Now, of course, the problem there is sometimes they might be better than you and then you lose your work in the future. But generally speaking, people will tend to keep going back to you as well. But definitely being interesting and informative as well. So, You want someone who can be there when necessary, but can also provide a good tale. So I recommend, spending a bit of time just having a look, having a listen to the radio and just thinking, okay, why is that person good? Why am I enjoying listening to this person? What makes this person being interviewed more interesting than another person that I've heard before? And when you're reading a story, it's like, all right, what is it that's good about that quote as well? So spend a bit of time thinking about what makes someone good at what they do. So being prepared for the media means knowing what your message is. So you might think that you know what you're going to talk about, but it really does help to be prepared, and I don't think you can ever be too prepared. So definitely thinking about what you want to say and thinking about who your audience is as well. So really, I find it helps sometimes that if I've got a certain audience, like for example, the New FM audience is completely different to the ABC audience. So they're the younger skewed audience, and their educational qualifications are less. So think about the words that you use as well. So generally speaking, tend to keep your words quite simple. And then think about, your 3 key points. So for everything that you do, just really think about 3 key points. So if you're talking about your work, for example, just think, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is who I'm doing it for, and this is why I'm doing it. So sometimes the how isn't so important. Sometimes you think with your work, the how is actually to you the really interesting thing, but for others it's not necessarily, and it's almost more when people are thinking about why their work is important. I think, all right, what's your end goal? Like, what's the ultimate aim with your work? Like, if you could think, if everything worked out well and everything went according to plan, how is this going to benefit the community and how will it benefit everyone around you? Now language is a really interesting one. One of the first magazines I worked for, wait for it, was Barbie magazine, right? So as in Barbie the doll. So I used to write for 5 to 12-year-olds, and it was the best thing I ever did, because to write for a 5 to 12-year-old, you had to capture their attention straight away. You had to use really simple language, and it had to be really cool. So for me, when I started using Twitter, I really thought back to Barbie, because I had to be short and I had to be concise, and the words I had to use. So think about that. So think about being as simple as you can. Certainly when it comes to speaking as well, I recommend recording yourself and having a listen to hear how you sound. When you're using phrases and terms that are complex, certainly giving pauses before you make words, so pausing in your terms. You might have a word that you stumble over, or it's a bit of terminology that you'd like to put in there. Say today I'd like to talk to you about, I can't even think of a complex word now, but anyway, that was my dramatic pause. Well, single cell genomics. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you today about single cell genomics. So just a little bit of a pause beforehand, it sort of makes people stop and think. If you have to use terminology, then give a simple explainer afterwards. So don't just use a term, and certainly never use acronyms. So, you don't use an acronym. What you've got to do is when you're thinking about being on the radio, for example, someone's listening to you, but they're not paying full attention to you. They're not sitting there listening to the radio. They're typing, or they're working, or they're driving, they're doing something. You don't want people just to go, what was that? And then they've missed your next bit because they're too busy trying to think about what you said before. All right, so here's where I talk more about the photos. So every story that you do, I'll even say for radio as well, like for radio, for example, the best stories that they do on radio are ones they can then share on Facebook. So if you've got a photo that you can supply, you have a better chance of them then putting it up online and sharing it on Facebook later on. So definitely always think when you're doing something, think, all right, what's my visual for this? What's the things I can do? And whether it's something teeny tiny, like some of the stuff that Erica does, or whether it's something massive, like there's a great photo that we've got somewhere to do it. So, look, I went too ahead. I've already told you why to use landscape. I'll give you an example of a landscape photo that I did. So I pitched a story to the Newcastle Herald for one of our researchers who works in eating addiction. And I thought, what's a photo that I can put her forward to? And then I realised that over at Pinky's, which is a little shop on campus, they had this wall of all different lollies, and I thought, I'll get her in front of that. So we got her in front of that and got this great big landscape photo, and she got like a 4-page story out of it because she had the great image. So definitely always the landscape. Yeah, sure, they can crop your head out later on if they want to, but give them the good landscape shot and they're more likely, particularly if you can give them 2 or 3, then they're much more likely because, people like to look at the images, readers like to look at images, so therefore they're more likely to put them in. You'll get more story. Now, this is something that a journalist actually taught me from radio. When you are being interviewed, whether it's on TV, radio, or even by the newspaper, smiling when you're speaking is the best thing that you can do to make your voice sound more interesting. So if you're just speaking and you don't smile, your voice tends to be more flat and monotone. However, if you smile, then your voice just has this really nice intonation and upward reflections. If you're in the radio studio, that's great because you're smiling back at the person who's looking at you. And it actually makes you look more trustworthy on television as well. So sometimes, for example, you might have a topic that you think, it's not a good topic, it's not a happy topic that I talk about, my work is not great, but there is something positive about it. So even, for example, let's say that you're talking about brain cancer, which is obviously not a great topic, but there is something hopeful and there's something optimistic. So when you're talking about the general things, don't worry about the smile, but at the end just go, and we're really hopeful that the work that we're doing can actually make a positive impact. So have a think about how you can smile. Right, you're going to go on TV. So everyone sort of thinks, what do I wear? And to be honest, I think you have to be yourself, but the main thing that you don't do is you don't wear spots or stripes. What will happen with spots and stripes is they do this thing called moiraying, and it makes these little fuzzy bits so your clothes will move on TV. Generally speaking, I would recommend just a nice bright bold colour, like your teal, the red, that kind of thing. Large florals can be okay as well, but generally speaking, you tend to go with just something that's a bit more bright and bold. Again, think about where you'll be going. So if you've got this, let's say you've got a lot of nice blue in the background, you wouldn't want to look out there and go, I'm just going to have that as my background, I'll dress in grey and white, because you'll just blend into it. You want to pop out a little bit. So have a bit of think about where you'll be doing the photo shoot and think about what you can do. So now I'm just going to show you how to stand when you're being interviewed or being photographed, okay? So what you do is you put one foot in front of the other, but you put all your weight on your back foot, right? So what that does is that stops you from doing this and it makes you do that, okay? What you want to do, so, did you see the difference?
Yeah, that's why.
So you just sort of do that. So let's say, for example, you're being interviewed by NBN. They'll tell you where to stand, where to look. Generally speaking, you look at the journalist and the camera will be off to the side. But it just, I don't know, I feel better if I'm not tense. And I know if I'm standing like that, I'll get more tense and my shoulders will raise and then my voice will start to sound bad. But if you're more relaxed, then you can do that as well. Hands are really hard. If you speak with your hands, I'd say that to the camera operator. I'd say, I'm a big hand talker. So what they'll do is instead of cropping you here, so every now and again you just get little fingers popping up, they'll crop out so your hands are actually in it. You can also just loosely hold your hands as well. So like this, not down low, but more here. So you can just loosely hold your hands. Or ideally you'll be standing somewhere where you can just loosely pop your hand down as well. What you want to do is just be relaxed with these things and be yourself. Now, I really just recommend just the really smallest amount of makeup if you're going on TV. Like, as you know, if people are TV presenters, everyone wears makeup, a little bit of powder, a little bit of a lip colour as well. But be careful with lip gloss, and particularly when you're going on radio, because have you ever heard that sound? That's from lip gloss. So anyway, try to think about the one that you do. And then, yeah, your eyebrows or your eyelashes, just do those as well. All right, so TV appearances, everyone expects you to do a couple of takes. No one expects that you're going to go out and you're going to get it straight away. If you say something and it's wrong, like sometimes you'll stumble over your words or you might accidentally say the wrong thing, just say, I'm sorry, I've just made a mistake. Can we do that again? They're prepared for it. They'll allocate a good half an hour for you. Don't stress. No one gets it right first time. The journalist won't get it right first time. Don't think that you will. Do whatever you can to feel comfortable, okay? So if they say to you, oh, can I just get you to sit up on top of this desk, and you're like, oh, no. You can say no, like you really can. You're just like, yeah, look, no, I'm going to get really uncomfortable if I do that and I'm not going to speak. Well, how about we do this? Okay, so generally speaking, they won't make you do anything you want to do, and you can certainly put that back. A few years ago, I was interviewed by the Newcastle Herald and they said, can you just do this? And I went, oh, that's the Dulcie Bowling new idea pose. I can't do that. And I just, it's all right, we'll use the other photo. And I went, oh, okay. That photo was on the front page of the Herald up in the top right now. It's still there when you search for me, one of the top photos. But anyway, so definitely be prepared to say, no, thank you, I don't want to do that. Again, think of your two main grabs. Think, okay, what are the two main things that I want to say? And the thing is too, like you're being interviewed by them and you might get to the end of the interview and you think, oh, I didn't get to say my main point. So what you can say then is just as they're about to finish up, like even if it's on the radio and they're about to cut to the news, oh, can I just add one final thing? And then just go into it. Just say, but one other thing that I just wanted to add. Can I just say, and that's your call to action or the main point that you want to add. Always feel free, just because you haven't been asked the question, you can say, oh, I actually have one thing that I'd like to add, if that's okay. So yeah, definitely keeping your notes, dot point, large font next to you. Oh, there I go. Don't wear the lip gloss or such schmack effect. I recommend having a water before you go on air, 15 minutes beforehand, for example. Take one in. Generally speaking, if you're asked to do the radio and you can, go into the studio because it's just much better sound. You've got someone sitting opposite you. Sometimes having a cough lozenge beforehand as well, that can also make your mouth less dry. Opening up your diaphragm. So as I said before about standing not like this or that, if you are being interviewed and you're sitting down, just make sure that you don't collapse yourself down and that your diaphragm closes up because you won't be able to breathe as much. And if you're like me and you're talking a lot, you'll find that you get breathless and you can't say as much. So think about, really opening up your diaphragm so that you can get more air into your lungs. And yeah, definitely have a water. But before you do, so let's say I'm here and I'm on the radio, I'll just do this. Turn away from the microphone because there is nothing worse than hearing a giant gulp of water. Okay, so definitely going into the studio. They love you in the studio now that COVID's over. When you go to the studio, you just arrive, ring the doorbell at the desk, someone will come and grab you. They'll take you through to the studio. You've got headphones that you can put on, which is great because you can hear them. There's a microphone there that you can just, unlike most microphones, when you speak, it's really easy to adjust. Like you do it with one finger. It's very, very easy. So pop that down in front of you. Definitely making eye contact as well. It just makes you feel more comfortable, makes them feel more comfortable. And certainly talking to the producer beforehand and saying, it's my first time, I'm really nervous. They'll tell the host, it's my first time, I'm really nervous. And they will make you feel better because they want new guests, they want return guests, and they want to make you feel as comfortable as they possibly can. Now, if you can't go into the studio, I recommend a landline if you still have one in the cupboard that you can plug in. It just sounds much better than a mobile and you don't have to worry about it, cutting in or cutting out. If you have to use a mobile, put it on Do Not Disturb or float mode so no notifications come in when it's happening as well. If you're at home and you're listening to the radio while you're waiting for yourself to go on the radio, just turn the radio off before you go on the radio because there's a 3-second delay and you'll hear that and it makes a horrible sound. All right, so when people are scared about doing the radio or any form of media, they're worried that they're going to get asked controversial questions that are political and that could put their career at risk. You don't have to answer them. You're not obligated to answer them. However, the worst thing that you can say is no comment, just because it makes you sound guilty. So what I recommend is that you actually prepare for them. So if you're in a field that you know something is like that, prepare for it and think, do I have an answer that is actually a bit softer and gentler and will make people understand this a little bit more that I can prepare beforehand? So we owe it to the public to take all of this negative politics out of it. So I've spent my life listening to how people speak and answer questions. And I must say, I used to really dislike no comment, but what I hate more is like the way that our politicians are now turning it into an attack on the journalist and not answering questions. I just think it's disrespectful to the audience and it's disrespectful to the journalist. So if you can think of a way to do it, think about a response that you would make and why it's important, and then think about your tone. This is the time to really smile, and this is the time to make it sound really positive, and give it a go. Someone's got to do it. Like, someone actually has to start talking about some of these important topics, and I'd love to see it be you. All right, so let's say you've got a question and they're just persisting, right? I must say, in Newcastle, Paul Turton, who does the afternoon show, if anyone's going to do it, it will be him. He will be the one who will ask you the question. We'll keep on digging for it. You can answer that in a way, like just say, oh, that is a really great question. I can understand why you're interested in it. However, it's not my area of expertise, so I couldn't possibly answer it. However, the work that I'm doing is actually in, and then you just deflect off into your next area. So they tend not to go back if you then start talking. When you get called by a journalist, let's say something's happening, you're not expecting it, you don't have to talk to them straight away. If they say, oh, I just wanted to see if you could talk about something, you go, oh, absolutely, I'm just about to go into a meeting. Let me know what this is about, and can I give you a call back in 15, 20 minutes? That way you have time to prepare for it, write down some notes, have a drink, stand up, get ready. You don't have to do it straight away. No one is ever, surely not, no one's ever about to go live straight to it. They usually give you about half an hour or so. Yeah, definitely you can say no. So if you don't feel comfortable about something, definitely say no and suggest something alternative. You can say no to certain journalists. For example, I would never recommend that you talk to the Daily Mail, for example. Like, if there are publications that you know that don't do great things, that you don't like, that skew things and come out, you don't have to do it. Like, say, for example, there might be some journalists that you think, you know what, they're just not serious enough when they're talking about this topic. I feel that they'd be disrespectful for what I do. You don't have to do it. And if it's something that's really important, another journalist will follow you up as well. So you can say no, but think about why you're saying no. If you think, you know what, I think I'm going to get misrepresented here. I don't think this person is going to present my work in the best light. I'm not going to go to them. But why don't I actually, obviously there's interest in it, why don't I try another publication? Journalists will let you check the facts. So, for example, if you do TV or if you do newspaper and you've been quoted, you can ask the journalist if you can just check the quotes that they'll be printing from you. They won't let you check the whole article, but they will let you check your quotes and anything that they say about you. Remember that the journalist has nothing to do with the headline. So generally speaking, the headline will come from a sub-editor who probably doesn't even work in Newcastle. So you can't do anything about that, but you can certainly correct online articles. If it comes out and you're like, oh, spelt my name wrong, they've got my title wrong, whatever, you can just get in touch with them and they can change the online ones. But definitely ask to check them beforehand. And it can be done in a nice way as well. You can certainly I'd recommend before you start the interview, just go, oh, look, there's a couple of things here that are pretty complex. So if you like, I'd really like to help you out here, and I'll check them all for you, so I can get back to you in half an hour. So give them, make sure that they know that you'll help them meet their deadline, but you're just being really helpful. So yeah, no one starts off doing their first interview fantastically, except for someone that I put on the radio the other day. She was just amazing. Generally speaking, though, we need a lot of practice and we need to be natural and get better at what we're doing. Definitely find a friendly journalist. Anita Beaumont at the Newcastle Herald, for example, is a fantastic journalist. She's very sensitive and she does some great articles. And again, as I said, you know, ABC Newcastle are fantastic as well. There's some really nice ones at NBN as well. Definitely record yourself to listen. You'll find that you have some quirks. I used to say all the time, so much. So I had to stop myself. So I started recording myself, and I'd actually pinch myself every time I said and I got a bruise. But did you hear me say that before? So what I started doing was just pausing instead of saying So you think to yourself, okay, what do I do? So for example, one of the worst vocal quirks, which is an Australian quirk, which is an upwards inflection at the end of sentences.
That's nuts.
Yeah. The upwards inflection at the end of sentences is the worst quirk for a professional because it makes you sound like you don't know what you're talking about. It's like we're doing some really important work. Like, are you? Yeah. So anyway, try not to do that. So think about that. Another weird thing that I do that I only found when I recorded myself online was when I'm thinking, I raise my eyes up to the corner, which is weird. But so I stop myself trying to do that. Sometimes people find they move their head a lot as well. So if you do it, like, it's fine, but think about, you know, how it will look on TV or being interviewed. I definitely think you just want to be natural. You want to be yourself. We don't want like a series of automatons who all look the same. We want people who are natural and accessible as possible. Definitely listen and learn to who makes some good ones. I strongly recommend that you just do a Google search for Dr. Jessica Allen and find some of the work that she's done. So she's been on the Science Show, she's been on the Drum, she's been on Hack, she's been on a range of different programs. Listen to her and think, okay, what is it about her? She smiles when she talks. She knows what she's talking about. She makes the hydrogen economy sound accessible. Listen to that and just think, okay, that's why that person is good. Okay, just had to have a chance to throw my favourite quote here. Nevertheless, she persisted. So you will get knockbacks, okay? So you might think, oh, I've done it. I've got the perfect story. I've got a great angle. I've got wonderful photos. I'll send this off and they'll be like, silence, which is the worst. So you can follow up, or you might just get, yeah, no, sorry, I'm not interested. If you get the sorry, I'm not interested, take advantage of it and just go, oh yeah, totally understand. Is there anything in there that you might be interested in, or my field of work? Like, is there a way that I can make this interesting for you? Is there some way that I can talk to you that you'd like to hear? Manners are just so important. You can't be polite enough. So, for example, once you've been interviewed, sending a thank you back to the journalist, saying thank you so much for the article. When it comes out, go, that's great. I've shared that on my social media. Thank you so much. But definitely keep on trying. Don't just try it once and something's happened. People have had bad interviews before where they've just walked out and just thought, oh, just wasn't happening for me today. That happens. Try it again, get better at it, do it again. This is why you want to do it. This is me being very selfish because I want to see more women in the media. I want to see more faces in the media, and I want to hear different voices in the media. There is no more important time than now to have this range of diversity. You can't be what you can't see. So we need to see you, we need to hear you. And that is what I would very much love to see. Now, we do have time. Can I just ask everyone just to quickly turn to the person next to you? There's three of you do it. And just ask each other these questions. So what do you do? Why do you do it? And what's one fascinating thing about you and your work? Just turn to each other and just very quickly ask that question.
What do you do?
So what do you do? I'm an engineer. I'm an
Okay. I'm interested in understanding how the theory of sun and stars work. So that's what I do. Why do you do what you do?
Because I think
Really? Okay, then it's interesting they build the picture of yourself and also your conscious. Okay, so I thought the other way around, that the conditions would make them affect their mental health, but no, their mental health affects the safety. Right, and also fast, yeah, okay. So, and maybe this might make sense of.
Very different, very
It's a great problem in astrophysics to understand how the magnetic field in the sun and stars relate, particularly for humans on Earth, space weather, infrastructure, our technology. Yes. So it's important to explain our role in sun's magnetic field and how it's affecting Earth.
If you're on Zoom, send each other questions in the chat.
We have a lot of telescope data that we can work satellite, I especially use satellite, NASA satellite observations. Sure, in solar physics, all the data is public. Yeah, it's very open. No. No research. No, it's always this box. No humans involved. Yeah. I can imagine that it would be much more difficult. Like big data. Someone else collects data, I just use it. And then I think we already did this. What's fascinating?
Okay, one more minute.
I already did that work. I just had myself, but tell me.
There is no simple maybe going out there situation take away that road safety crash history to make sure that residents, particularly the elderly, have safe and accessible ways to get to the places they need to. And most people now no longer capacity to so we need to make sure that we've got those.
I would take now as an example.
There are so many ones that say no to the harm and wanting to have.
It's just the same with elections. One of our events is a solar storage that can take coverage of our technology. Even though it may be a rare.
Okay. So how do we went well. There's so much conversation going on. This is wonderful. So how did you go? Was your buddy clear? Did you learn something new? Did you think to yourself, you know what, I would like to know more about that?
Yeah.
That's the main thing. All right. So have a think about that and build on that. So when you finish up today, just go back and go, you know what, I'm just going to build on that and I'm going to go back and do some more. Question time. All right. So
Thank you, Linda.
thanks, Erica.
I will try and moderate the questions, but that is the question. Questions from the room, first of all. If you've got questions on Zoom, if you can type them into the chat, we will manage those as well. So, Joe.
Oh, I work for Transport for New South Wales, and I'm one of the leads in the HunterWiSE Network, so Women in STEM Employment Network, and I've been asked to have a Joe's blog, and I've never done anything to do with blogs before, and a little bit overwhelming. So do you have any advice
Absolutely.
on starting up a blog?
Yeah. So I started blogging about 12 years ago when there was the move to digital media, and I thought, you know what, I need to learn how a digital audience works, and so I started blogging. Blogs are really easy. So basically what I want you to do is I want you just to think about 10 different topics that you'd like to work on, then you have to be 250 words. Like the ideal blog is really short. Whenever you think of anything like that, think about what goes on a phone and think about maybe 2 scrolls. So basically it's a really top line, almost like the too long didn't read, give me a really brief introduction to it. So think about all the things think about the 10 important topics. I reckon you can probably come up with 15 or 20.
Well, it's STEM related.
Yeah.
So everything to do with STEM or empowering women. I'm a STEM ambassador with Science and Technology Australia, so I get all of this information which I want to share to everyone. I don't want to keep it to myself, so I'm constantly reading the information that I get, and then anything I think that would benefit others, I intend to put on this blog.
Perfect. Well, look, I just start doing it. So first of all, just do it about you.
Yeah.
So do a little about you, and then talk about what you're going to share. But then one of the things that can often help is to print out like an old school calendar, and then just start planning for when you're going to do it and think about all your different topics. So if you write down all your different topics, just go, all right, what's the most important and in which way? And then just shuffle those out and put them out there, and then work it out. You can schedule your blogs as well. So let's say you get on a roll and you can write 1,000 words, which is 4 blogs. Just do them and schedule them. So write them up first of all in a Word document. Think to yourself, I'm going to write 250 words. It's all I need to do. So what are my key points? So one of your colleagues bumps into you and says, oh, what did you learn from that session the other day? And as you're walking to get your coffee, you're telling them that's what you're putting in the blog. Yeah. So it's like really short, sharp information. If you can have a photo as well, that's great. Just take a photo with your phone sideways. But just make it short and sharp. Using subheadings is a really good way as well. I'm very much a fan of white space and breaking things up to make it more interesting. But just go down and just write, okay, what are the main things? And what you might find is you've got your 10 topics, then you're like, oh, but this is actually 3 subtopics in here. So write them up. You've got all different ones that you can then link back to the other one as well. So certainly think about doing it in that way, and think about, to find out more about this, go back to this blog from here. Have a look at a blog that's been done and think about, let me think about someone who's good, and I'll send you a link.
Sounds good.
So I'm not sure if everyone on Zoom can hear the question, so we might make sure, Linda, if you can just rephrase what the questions are.
So that question was about blogging.
It's okay. Natalie.
Yeah, so this one is more about, I'm part of that generation. It was all of this technology was starting up. So I don't necessarily have a Twitter account. I do manage some other spaces like LinkedIn and my own Facebook page and official sites for women in engineering as well here in Newcastle. How much or how many times should we be putting links and other information out to our community? Is it a daily sort of exercise to make sure that we've got good traffic and interaction? Is that the expectation? Once a week, you want to keep everyone's interest and get more people involved, but at the same point, you don't want to be bombarding them every day.
No. Okay, this is a really hard one. This is about when you've got different platforms, how often you should be sharing with your audience. Now, the thing is, there's all these people who say that, for optimum search engine, don't worry about that, okay? So think about like once a week or once a fortnight and make that clear. So just let your people know, we'll be updating you fortnightly with information on this. So as long as people know what to expect, you don't want to be overwhelmed. And unless there's a lot of things happening, every day is too much, every couple of days. Like weekly is fine. Fortnightly is okay. Like particularly if you can share some more information as well. But just let people know, like give them the expectation as to when to expect it and how often to expect it as well. So certainly, it's hard. So with Facebook, for example, the algorithm works that it won't show things if people aren't commenting. It doesn't matter. Don't even worry about it. Put things up there, make sure they're on places. So for example, LinkedIn, you should be publishing everything you can. That doesn't matter because people don't necessarily get the notifications as well. Like an email comes to you and like I know that so often I'll unsubscribe because I'm like, do not email me again, right? So you don't want to be that person. But on LinkedIn, it doesn't matter. So put everything up there. You thought to yourself, got 6 years worth of articles I haven't put up. Put them up, it doesn't matter. They're online then and people can find them if they need to, but people will understand that kind of thing. So just do what works for you personally and think, all right, I'm putting it out there for people and they know what to expect and when to expect it.
That's good.
Sarah.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. It was really good. So I work at Hunt Water, and I guess sometimes we need to speak with the media as more, I guess, for damage control, say if people are out of water or if, the community is impacted. So did you have any advice in that respect? I guess it's like, yeah, we want to inform the community, but at the same time, we want to keep it kind of not too hectic.
Yeah, exactly. So I think with those things, seeming empathetic really helps. So understanding that so it's there's nothing worse than when someone just comes out with what you think is this manufactured statement that they don't have any heart behind. And I think that when it comes to damage control, first of all, if need be, a genuine apology always works. And certainly, I'm sorry that people are impacted. I understand how hard it is when it happens like this. Luckily, we've got our great teams who are out there working to get it happening, and we're really looking forward to being able to get it happening when it does happen. So yeah, I just think honesty is always best. Lack of defensiveness, you never want to be defensive. So that's where you really need to check your tone and think about smiling as much as humanly possible, because you never ever want to appear defensive when someone does something. It's like, well, we can't help it. It's like that just you do not want that. It's like, it was unexpected. We're working on a few programs at the moment to help us detect leaks earlier so that this will stop happening, and that's really exciting. However, this has happened now, and here's how we're working to fix it. So yeah, but definitely empathy to your audience is always a good one, and respect to your audience, just realising that it's a big thing for them if they've planned to do something for the day and it's not happening. So yeah.
Just as a follow-up, can you smile too much when you're delivering bad news?
Yeah.
Through the media?
Yeah, you don't want to look like a psychopath. Yeah. If it's bad news, I probably wouldn't, but it'd be like, that this is where you sort of think, like, I understand that everyone's been impacted by that and it's not good. However, what we're doing is we're trying to fix it.
Great. I think Leah's got a question on Zoom.
Yeah, Renee on Zoom has posted a message asking a question which I think affects a lot of people now that more people are working from home, which is, how do you find a good space in a home environment to deliver a radio interview? A few people have popped in and said they found that locking themselves in their car was helpful. Someone liked to go into their walk-in wardrobe and they found that useful. Have you got any suggestions for people doing interviews from home?
So this is a question about doing interviews from home and how you find the space. My favourite clip of all time is still the BBC dad whose two kids interrupted him during live TV. So, and there's been a few of that happening now. So I used to work from home when I had a young child, and I would just let her know that, I was on the radio, she couldn't interrupt me, give her something to play with out there. The car is definitely a good space. It can sound a bit muffled, but a car is an extremely good location. I know that when we first had COVID, many ABC presenters actually went into their walk-in wardrobes and presented from in there because it was most similar to a sound booth. So do that, but definitely trying to make sure that you're not interrupted. If you've got someone around who can look after the kids or the dog or the cat or whatever, that's optimal. But if not, then step outside and do it somewhere where you won't be as interrupted. But realistically, everyone's pretty forgiving, and maybe you'll go viral with something like BBC Dad and everyone will love you for it.
Are we able to get a copy of your presentation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Just following on from the smiling, women are often told to smile a lot.
Oh, I hate that.
And male presenters, especially in science, don't tend to smile so much and are taken much more seriously. Do you have an opinion on that? I mean, it's always good to be open and accessible, but when do you really have to smile so much?
I don't think
Is there a difference there, or is?
Yeah, so as I said, I would like to see less male faces and voices on, I think, and so we can't just try and be different for the sake of it or not different for the sake of it. I think you have to be yourself.
Yeah,
so
but I also want to be taken seriously.
You do want to be taken seriously. So, and I think the thing is to ensure that your title is always used is probably the most important thing. So definitely putting yourself forward as professional. I don't think that as a woman smiling will make you be taken any less.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's you know, unless you're talking about the loss of life, then I think you can smile, and it just means that you're approachable and friendly. And again, have a look, you know, how I said, listen to the good people, listen to the bad ones as well. And sometimes there are people up there who do it and you're just like, you shouldn't, you know, it's not great. Like what you're trying to do, so often what you're trying to do is you're trying to make people believe in the work that you do and think it's important and think it's relevant and why it's good to them. So the smiling helps them because they just think you're naturally a more friendly and appealing person that they want to work with.
Rennie.
Is there a fine line between apologising and being sincere and also taking on liability or responsibility for what just occurred if it's not necessarily your fault or your organisation's fault?
Yeah, that's where you do have to be careful, and certainly anything like that would go through your corporate affairs or so on. But it's certainly, you know, if you say I'm sorry rather than we're sorry, you have a better chance of that. But as far as liability goes and culpability, I don't know, I think we're seeing so much of the non-apology these days, which I think is more insulting than no apology. So that I'm sorry you feel that way, or it's, you know, I'm sorry it's happened to you is one thing, but yeah, it's like I'm sorry if you took it that way is not an apology. So yeah, definitely if there's something like that you're concerned about, then definitely escalate that to your corporate affairs or media team or anyone who might be able to help you in this way. But generally speaking, it's not going to be an issue that you need to be worried about.
Hi, I do a PhD in marketing technology, and I work a lot with industry, especially on a local level. So I've been interviewed by the Herald recently. And my question is about how to frame the industry connection without sounding like I'm advertising them, because that was a big issue for that journalist, and I was just trying to make sure that if they mention anyone, it's on equal terms and everyone feels well represented, rather than put someone forward that contributes as much as everybody else and make everyone else feel neglected. So how do you juggle that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question about how when you're trying to speak to a journalist and ensure that everyone is represented, and how you do so without it sounding like an advertisement, because that is, nothing will get a journalist back up more than them thinking that you're asking them to do something or that you're directing them to do something. So and it's really hard, and journalists, and researchers, for example, who work as part of a research team will see that, because they'll be interviewed and it's all about them, and it's like, yeah, but what about my team? Sometimes, yes, the team will get mentioned, but often they won't. So it's almost a case of like having the expectations set with your industry partners that it may not happen, and there might have to be other places that happen. So, for example, if you do the interview in the Newcastle Herald and it doesn't get mentioned, then you put it on your LinkedIn and you share. I'm lucky enough to work in an industry partnership with, and you tag them in there. You can't rely on the journalist to do anything. You can speak to them before the interview, for example, and just say, look, I understand that you're after a story. However, for me, what's really important is the fact that I'm getting to do this in partnership. So not only am I a university student, but I'm also working with industry, and that actually adds value to the work that I'm doing. So I'd really appreciate it if we could work out a way that we could share that. So almost doing it beforehand, so that rather than it seeming like you're just trying to insert something into the conversation later where they're just going, and you can tell, because I'll be just like, I'm not putting it. So if you say it to them beforehand, just so they can get a bit of an idea that that's what's important, and just say, is there a way of doing this? Is there a way that we can talk about it? So for example, it might be something where in future you think, all right, well, for the photo, I'm going to go to my industry and do it there. I'll get the photo taken there, so it's obvious I'm a PhD student, but here I am working with my industry partners. So sometimes you've just got to, again, manners are always a good thing, but then maybe thinking outside the square a little bit around that to see how you can get it done and what's important to them as well.
Any more on Zoom, Leanne?
Yeah, I'm mindful that our Zoom people are going to cut out in just a couple of minutes. So there was just one question, which was about how do you prioritise putting yourself out there to the media when it's really not your strength, and it's something that's taking away from your workload essentially.
So how do you prioritise putting yourself out there to the media when it's not your strength and it's not part of your work? I totally understand that everyone is very time pressured and has very little to do. For academics, for example, impact and engagement is something that we are increasingly measuring. So doing media is the kind of thing that can help with your impact and engagement, and one that I'd recommend. However, you only have to do 1 or 2 things per year. You don't have to do a great deal. So it's almost like going, all right, let's balance it out. Could I go and speak to a Rotary group, which means I've got this much prep time, this much travel time, this much talking time, getting home, or could I spend those 3 hours and allocate that to doing some media? So it really is a case of just, looking at your diary, allocating the time and just going, all right, what can I swap out here? And how can I do it? And how can I get best bang for the buck as well? So just think, okay, I'm not going to just do everything that comes to me, but what are the really good things that I can do? And choose the best ones, the ones that most reach your audience and get the message across that you want.
That's great. Thank you for all those wonderful questions, and particularly thanks to everyone on Zoom for joining us today. Hopefully you got as much out of it as those of us here in the room. I'd like to thank Linda very much for coming bright and early to this wonderful space at New Space, and everyone else, as Regina said at the beginning, make sure you're on the HunterWiSE email lists, as there will be other events coming up. In particular, we should have one for International Day of Women in Engineering in late June. So watch this space for information about that event. And thanks for those first timers. Hopefully you'll come back again next time. It's a great network to be a part of. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.